Incredible combat in Star Wars runs strong throughout the franchise, but this dream project from a surprising actor would take it to a whole other level. And what if the Jedi Council knew about the Sith for way longer than they let on? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
There has been an Order 66 revival, and it's honestly a revival of the prequels in general. Phantom Menace broke records for a re-release and became the highest streamed movie on Disney+.
Wow.
And I think it really just showcases that there was and still is a lot to appreciate with the prequels. And if you pay attention to the conspiracy theories, a lot of the reasons that the prequels were hated was because of George Lucas and his very controversial move to digital. He was kicked out of the Directors Guild and the Writers Guild, and there were a lot of controversies with how he wanted to make movies and how the movie industry wanted to make movies. So that was one of those things that influenced the reasons why originally the critics' response to The Phantom Menace were actually quite strong and positive. And only later were there changes in that.
Mm-hmm. I could see that, just the whole political scene of Hollywood.
Yes.
Being kind of upset with someone, really trying to shake things up and say, no, I want it to be this way. And when everyone else is doing it a certain way, that's making them a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. And when there's money to be had, don't mess with it.
Yeah, so that's the theory around why the prequels ended up getting hated. But one of the persons that was in the crossfire was Ahmed, who played Jar Jar Binks, and he's had a revival coming into the fray. He basically played this canon Jedi in this competition TV series, for kids. Kalarn Beck is the character, and he was actually brought more further into canon in The Mandalorian and was the Jedi that was protecting Grogu.
Right.
So he's got a fleshed out story in the background around his character, so he's somewhat of a known character if you pay really close attention, but he's had somewhat of a revival when we look at that kind of stuff. And he said recently that he would love to do a John Wick style Star Wars movie. He says, quote, I want to do a Jedi John Wick as Kalarn Beck, and I don't even need to say any words. I just want to do 2 hours of lightsabers and people in the way. I really want to do something like that because the fight that I did for The Mandalorian is 0.1% of what I could do. And there's so much more.
I love his confidence.
Yes.
Man, a Jedi John Wick would be quite the something. I don't know how you could pull it off with you being a good guy and slaughtering people.
That is the direction I wanted to go with this topic.
Okay.
So, as the Jedi, you're supposed to be the symbol of peace and justice across the galaxy. You're supposed to protect the little guy. John Wick what's funny is we just recently watched all the John Wick movies, literally a week ago, we watched the fourth one for the first time. And so it was just funny that this comes up. Love the movies. They're really great. But John Wick is a retired assassin that has this secret underground cult of other assassins. Mm-hmm. Not the most stand-up kind of guys.
No.
The Jedi are also pretty much a cult. But they're around justice and freedom in the galaxy and fighting for the good guy.
Yeah, and light,
justice, all of that. So I don't see how you could have a John Wick style Star Wars and be a Jedi.
Well, yeah, because John Wick is mostly based on revenge and corrupted systems and stuff like that. So yes, the Jedi are corrupt, but not like that. Not in a justifiable way that you would go in and clean house.
But then you put it into perspective with the Jedi series of video games and how many droids and stormtroopers that you brutally murder. stormtroopers at that time would still be humans. They aren't clones. So Cal Kestis has probably the highest body count other than Luke Skywalker, who killed up an entire planet-sized spaceship, which I think had like 500,000 to 1 million people on it. Like it was massive. So Luke Skywalker is also a huge murderer. But like maybe that's the way you do it. Like maybe it is this post-Order 66, which is why I brought it up in the beginning of like Order 66 was this moment where the Jedi are on the run. They're trying to fight for their lives to stay themselves. There are many people that they are fighting against. So maybe it is Kalar Beck in the situation of trying to save someone that is in a stronghold of the Empire or the Inquisitors or something along those lines could be something that would make sense for the amounts of murder and brutality required to have a Jedi John Wick.
Yeah. Okay. I could see it. I could see like maybe the Empire has a bunch of younglings or something like that, and it's just fighting your way in, fighting your way out.
Which Kalar Beck is like, that's why he's there in that moment, is he's a teacher of the Jedi, a youngling. So like that would be perfect if there is this moment of him trying to like save some younglings, like from the slaughter kind of thing. Like I could totally see that as being something with his character. Yeah.
It feels more video game to me than anything. Which is why I'm still so impressed that John Wick works.
Well, there's a lot of the scenes when we were watching John Wick where we're both like, this feels exactly like a video game. Like he's picking up other people's weapons, checking them out, picking up ammo. In the fourth one, there's this like overarching where it's going from like the top down.
From room to room.
Which is basically just a top-down shooter game.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like a dungeon crawler where we were just like going room to room, defeating all the bad guys.
Yeah, so like John Wick, Star Wars, weapons, I guess would be like the clearest through line of that. But I do want to pose like what this would look like in Star Wars. Like, would it actually work to have something along these lines?
I'm not opposed. I think it could work. I think it would take some work though to make a compelling story, to make it believable, to make it Star Wars feeling.
There has to be a reason for this. Like if you look at the Mandalorian is bounty hunter based. Yeah. So there is this like darker edge to that story, and he does kill a lot of people to get to Grogu. So it's not unfounded to have a level of like slaughter in Star Wars in that way. Yeah. And if you just put them as like, oh, these are the villains.
Right.
That is a good way to justify most actions. If you are a Jedi, well, technically it would go against the code for you to murder anyone. If your mission, as we saw in the Clone Wars, is to save someone, feel free to murder all along.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, this is the gray area of the Jedi.
Yes.
Well, especially with the threat of your entire order being slaughtered also, there's kind of a justification, I think, to slaughtering back. Now, I'm sure there would be a lot of Jedi who would say, no, we should be nice and kind to everybody, but I don't get the vibe from this guy.
Kalar Beck is a cold-blooded killer, is what Ahmed Best is saying.
I think he's going to be a little hard-pressed to sell that story. There's going to have to be some kind of character arc for Kalar Beck in that. But do I think it's possible? Absolutely.
Honestly, would love to see. Like, I don't know if it would be John Wick. I don't know if that's something that he could convince the upper heads of Lucasfilm and Disney to actually get them to make. I would just love to see Kalar Beck in something else besides that little bit of cameo. I would love to see his story fleshed out some more. I would love just to generally see more of his experience in the Jedi Order. And it would just give Ahmed Best like an opportunity to really showcase his character, because I think he deserves that moment of like redemption in Star Wars, to have that moment where like, yes, You may have been the person that acted as Jar Jar, but also that's not something that's going to define you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, there is a redemption that we could definitely see for him, and we all want to see. We all want to see him rise up to a
Star Wars is all about redemption.
Yeah, to a cool character that we can all get behind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jar Jar is what it is, but maybe it's time for a little redemption.
Yeah. Well, also, we watched Phantom Menace in theaters. Jar Jar isn't as annoying as everyone made him out to be. Like,
he's fine.
Is he annoying? Yeah. But he's not like, oh my gosh, you ruined the whole movie annoying.
Yeah, and at least he actually had a point and purpose.
Yeah.
Like, it was to get to the Gungans. Like, we do need to have that connection. So, at least he had a good point and purpose. It wasn't all just comedy and like... Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see Kalarn come back as his character, get some more exploration of his character and backstory and what he does. Like, does he actually die in Mandalorian's Order 66 flashback? Is there an opportunity for him to have even more depth in the future? I think it's possible. I would love to see it. I would love for his character not to be ended, but also like they also have the whole of the not even like pre-Clone Wars time frame up to Order 66 happening that they could flesh out his character and story. So a way that you could do like a John Wick style without like the repercussions necessary of the Jedi's morals would be in the Clone Wars time frame, because it'd be droids, and you could do assassin droids, so they're even more difficult to go against, to make it much more intriguing from a storytelling perspective. So there is that time frame that they could play around with.
True. Yeah, I like the idea of droids, and because there's no moral anything with that, and
don't let the robots hear you.
Oh, sorry, robots. It is true, they have their own bars, so... what does that say?
I forgot about that, and I wish I could continue to forget about that.
They need their downtime too, man.
Oof.
Yep. Not sure what they're trying to say about that, but okay, moving on. But the assassin droids, I think, are definitely something that they keep touching on.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not actually like delving into enough, I think.
Yeah.
Like they're cool. Like we've seen a couple.
IG-11, IG-88. There's the commando type droids that are in like the Clone Wars time period that we see a lot of in the Clone Wars TV show.
Yeah.
There's some cool stuff there, and they could introduce even more intriguing ones too that are more like specifically anti-Jedi that I think could be really fascinating to see.
Yeah. Yeah, throw us a new bone. Come on.
Do something new.
Yeah.
But also, like, there's a whole realm of storytelling and tying into our previous discussions around the Phantom Menace. There was the big thing with Star Wars Acolyte, and it's questionable playing around with this idea of the Sith. But there's this theory that I found that I think is actually really good in terms of making it more understandable, and also a little bit devious in terms of why they think the Sith are actually gone and they haven't seen them for 1,000 years. So this theory alleges that key members of the Jedi High Council knew about the Sith but did not choose to disseminate that information. Could be because they were defeated or disappeared entirely, or generally just... they didn't feel like it was necessary to cause the uproar that the Sith would do to the Jedi High Council or the Jedi Order, or generally just the Republic in and of itself. So what's the proof about this theory? And this is where it gets interesting. This is where I think there's some actual meat to this theory, and it comes from the Phantom Menace. And if you look at the reactions that the Jedi High Council had when Qui-Gon was like, "Hey fam, there's a Sith here. Got a red lightsaber, double-bladed. Probably should check this out, guys." And the reactions from those key members. If you look at, I think it's Ki-Adi-Mundi, who's like, we haven't seen the Sith for 1,000 years.
Yep.
But if you pay attention to Mace Windu and if you pay attention to Yoda, they aren't actually surprised at this revelation of a Sith. Maybe they would be more interested in like, are you sure it's the Sith? Is it just someone that's playing dress up? Like, what is the actual thing here? No, they're like, intriguing. The Sith have returned. Always two there are. Never more, never less. Like,
that's true. Like they don't really question it. They just kind of go with it and they're like,
okay, they're back. I've expected this the whole time. That's kind of like the vibe that they give off.
Kind of, yeah. There is this like quick to jump in and be like, oh, we should check that out. Maybe we should find out more. That's very plausible. Like there's just kind of like, wait, we're actually thinking of this, even though they've been gone for a millennium? Like, okay.
Wait a second. Yeah, they're gone for a millennium and they just randomly show up and we're just going to take that as like they're here.
Yeah.
So that's part of the theory. Another one was the Jedi believe that peace has been restored. There is no need for a chosen one. There is no need to restore balance to the Force because, as they've clearly seen, the Jedi are all that there is. There are no Sith. And if there are a Sith, that means there are things that must happen due to prophecies. There are things, including like the downfall of the Jedi. There's a huge threat. So they would be actually very invested in making sure nothing came out of any Sith in that 1,000-year time period up until the Phantom Menace. So if there was signs, which I would assume over the course of a millennia that there are signs, even if it's someone who is Force sensitive and was utilizing the dark side of the Force, more established people, rogue apprentices, there have to have been at some point something along the lines of a Sith in that 1,000-year time period. And part of this theory alleges that the Jedi would be so invested in continuing the peaceful rule of the Jedi that they would do basically anything to continue to have that control and that power to make sure everything runs and continues to be peaceful.
Gotcha. So pretty much what you're saying is that no matter what happens, the Jedi are going to at least make it look like
there aren't any
Sith.
Yeah.
Because that's in their best interest to keep the peace, to keep how things have been going, and to keep their own sort of power
exactly
going.
And not necessarily power in terms of like an evil way of like, I must amass all of the power so I can continue to control the galaxy. It's not that. It's like we have, as a Jedi Order, amassed a level of peace across the galaxy that up until this point has never been really achieved. That's why the High Republic's there. It's this symbol in this time period of like the Jedi's golden era, really.
Yeah.
So of course they're heavily invested in it. There's the whole like saying of like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if everything that you are invested in is threatened, you're going to try to lessen the threat as much as you can.
In the way that you know how, which is dealing with it quietly and then maybe sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah. So there's this idea that to make the Acolyte fit to canon, for that one little tiny line in the Phantom Menace that is smaller than other changes that have been made in Star Wars that have had bigger changes, like somehow Palpatine returned, that they need to justify this action by basically killing everybody. So there aren't any witnesses of this quote-unquote Sith. That's one of the theories of like, this is how they can make sure it's canon and there isn't anything questioned or anything like that. The other one theorizes that the Jedi Council would be so invested in and want to hide the fact around this huge amount of disorder that would be caused if they knew there was a Sith or there were rumblings of a Sith, that they would strategically hide it. I mean, they hit a whole planet, for goodness sake, because it could have changed things in terms of Palpatine's plans, and Palpatine ended up tweaking with that a little bit. But it was within full knowledge of the Jedi Order, I would assume, that records had been changed. Mm-hmm. Or at least the librarian would know.
You would think. So, okay. So going back to their first theory about everyone having to die to keep this secret of the Sith coming out. That's a very dark ending. And it would be an ending. Like, that would be a crazy way to end the series. Or just the one season.
Rogue won it.
Yeah.
Everyone dies.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like a very plausible idea.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the second one more appealing.
Yeah. I think if they're going to go any of the routes, they're going to go the route that doesn't require everyone to die.
Yeah. Yeah, because ultimately they're trying to build characters that we want to see around. And
this is a Star Wars story, so there has to be good triumphing evil in certain ways. Even though this is a dark side specific story, there still needs to be growth and character development. And typically in Star Wars, that means like the good guys have to have some chance or some change or something like that. Like the heroes will eventually prevail, as we see, but the actions that are done in Acolyte will have a ripple effect that will ultimately cause the fall of the whole Jedi Order.
Right. I really, really want to see this like play out, see how the good of the Jedi is kind of used against them.
Well, if you look at it, like the whole interpretation of the Chosen One, this very flawed interpretation of the Chosen One prophecy, is that bringing balance to the Force would require the eradication of all Sith, when true balance is equal parts good and evil. Like, that's the true balance of the Force. So the Jedi perceive that balance of like, oh, the Sith are going to go away and true balance will be good all around. But the Jedi were wrong. The Force and the prophecy of the Chosen One required that there would be balance restored to the Force. And after this 1,000 years of just the Jedi, there was this opportunity and need for balance to be restored.
Yeah.
Which was the Jedi had overreached in the galaxy. They become too powerful, and they had become too proud and were so sure of their hubris and everything like that, that they needed, in terms of like the balance of the Force, they had to be taken down.
Well, and this goes back to the reasoning of like why we would think that maybe someone in the council knew that there were Sith around. It's because they wouldn't take Anakin seriously if they didn't think there was still balance to be restored.
Yes.
They wouldn't have said, oh, yeah, there's a prophecy and we should probably listen to it because maybe this kid is actually something, if they thought, we've already done it. Like, we're good.
We've already got
the
balance to the
is
Force.
there. Like, all is well. Like, they wouldn't have actually considered this if they thought, we're good. It can't be because
we're already balanced. How could we even be more balanced?
Yeah. How could this prophecy be coming true now if we're all balanced and good and sorted out? Somebody knew on that council to be like, maybe we should give this kid a chance. I think this might be something. Like, come on.
Yeah, there has to be something along those lines with the Jedi and their prophecy. But we'll find out, hopefully with Ahsoka, or maybe they just don't talk about it at all. That is also an option. Let us know your thoughts on this theory, as well as your thoughts around a Jedi John Wick. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, or contact uplinkpodcast.com if you're listening to this wherever you find podcasts. As always, thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.